على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة ولهم عذاب عظيم. ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون. في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون. وإذا قيل لهم لا تفسدوا في الأرض قالوا إنما نحن مصلحون ألا إنهم هم المفسدون ولكن لا يشعرون. وإذا قيل لهم آمنوا كما آمن الناس قالوا أنؤمن كما آمن السفهاء ألا إنهم هم السفهاء ولكن لا يعلمون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم. اللهم افتح لنا باب رحمتك وانشر علينا من خزائن علومك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. My brothers and my sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's an honor for me to be with you all today. This place feels like a home somewhat for some reason. Thank you for being so welcoming. Tonight is a very special night. It's the night where the lover of Rasulullah, the lover of Ali ibn Abi Talib, their blood boils on this night. Because the lover of Rasulullah knows that the Prophet used to carry Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam with him everywhere. He's the one who named him Hussain, and he would tell him, "You are from me and I am from you." And he would say, "You are an Imam whether you stood or whether you were sitting. Imam qama aw qa'ada sayyid shababi ahl al-jannah. You are the master of the youth of paradise. And you are prophesied to leave a legacy behind you. But that legacy begins tomorrow morning when the holiest blood, the blood of the Prophet, is spilt in order for us to have Islam now, because it had become so corrupted. The nation of Rasulullah, they are the ones who spilt the blood. That's the chaos behind this. You know what's so ridiculous? What's so ridiculous is when you see people that come to Islam and then they look into the Shi'i and the Sunni traditions and they see what happened in the Shi'i narrative and they say it's dark. What happened in the Shi'i historic narrative is dark. And that's why they don't choose to follow it. For some, they don't choose to follow it because it's difficult to accept that those around the Prophet would do what they did after the Prophet passes away. It's difficult to accept. So then, don't you know what happened in Karbala? Because no one can deny that. No one can deny that 50 years after the Prophet passes away, they gather around, they pray Dhuhr, and then they go and kill the Prophet's son. No one denies that. They all admit that. They all admit that. But tomorrow is a day of fasting and celebration, isn't it? But they all admit that. So how can one actually think that what happened after the Prophet's death is just a conspiracy and it's impossible to happen when you know something like Karbala happened? The nation of the Prophet killed the son of the Prophet. No one denies the fact, but it's hidden. Hidden because it opens up Pandora's box. Because if you look into that, you say, how could that happen? Where did that start? You go back in time a little bit, you see where it started. You see where it started, and that's what I want to talk about today. Today, inshallah, we're going to have a talk about this subject. We're going to keep it about Karbala, and then I'm happy to take any question from the crowd about this topic. Let's keep it here. I don't want to take random questions. Ask whatever you want about my speech or about Karbala or anything I'm going to say within history. Let's keep it here so we can remember Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. And then after that we'll go into a majlis. Okay? And I'm willing to do it for as long as you're willing to stay. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The Prophet comes and brings us this deen. And then he says, I want nothing from you, Muslims, except to love my family. That's all I want. Just take care of my family. Not only to love them, but to follow them. He said, I leave behind the Quran and my Ahlul Bayt, but let's say I don't want to follow them. At least take care of them. At least love them. They killed his family. They massacred his family and they took his women captive and they marched them through the cities of the people. So what happened? How could that happen? How is it possible? And Jed, if you think about it, you sit down and you try to think about how could this happen? It was only 50 years after the Prophet passes away that something like this occurred. How did it happen? The way to answer that question is also the same answer as to how could they go into the house of Sayyidah Zahra alayhi salam. How could that happen? How could they go into her house? How could they attack Sayyidah Zahra alayhi salam? It's the same answer, Quraysh. You must understand Quraysh. Quraysh must be understood for you to understand Karbala and for you to understand what happened in the house of Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. And if you don't know what happened, if you don't know what Quraysh is, if you don't understand Quraysh, you'll never fully get how this occurred. You have to understand Quraysh. So what's Quraysh? Quraysh is a tribe, the tribe of the Prophet, the tribe of the Imam. That's from the tribe of Quraysh. But first, we have to understand the context of this tribe. Okay? So just a small, compressed history lesson. Nabi Ibrahim, alayhi salam, he was in Palestine. He moved and he took his family by the order of Allah. He left them in a land, right? That's when we go to Hajj. He left them in a land, that land which we know now as Mecca. He left them in that land and then he moved. Ismail is there with Hajar, his wife and his child. The rites that we do in Hajj are all symbols of what happened in the story of Abraham. Abraham leaves and then Hajar goes between Safa and Marwa and she wants water and the spring of Zamzam springs forth. This is all something that occurred in the life of Ibrahim. The stoning of Shaitan, when Shaitan tried to whisper to him, he threw a stone at him. All of this is within the story of Ibrahim. So all the rites that we do, the slaughtering of the sheep instead of the slaughtering of Ismail, it all happened there. طيب. When Ibrahim leaves and Zamzam springs forth, what happened? Because this was in Arabia, 3,000 years before the Prophet was born. It was in Arabia. Tribes would constantly be moving. The reason why Arabia was the way that it was, where there were several different tribes, it was a fragmented land because there was no water. They constantly had to move. There were wells of water hundreds of kilometers apart. Groups of large groups of people would travel from one well to the next well. If it became too large, they would split up and they become different tribes. These tribes were like governments. In that time, your tribe was your identity. Because if you had no tribe, you would get caught, you would get raped, you'd get killed, you'd become a slave. So you had to have a tribe and you did everything you could for your tribe. You defended your tribe to the death. If you saw someone from your tribe fighting, you don't care who's right and wrong. You go and you attack the other tribe. That's how it was. The strongest survived. At that time, Ismail was in Mecca. Water sprang forth as a miracle because there's no water. As a miracle, there was water. When there was water, birds flocked towards the water, towards the spring. When the birds went there, some tribes that were nearby saw the birds going. They know there's water nearby, so they gravitate towards the water. They found a woman and a young boy. They settled by the spring, this tribe. This tribe was called Jurhum. Jurhum, they settled by the spring because they were looking for water all the time. They found here a hotbed of water. They sat by the spring and they camped out there. They stayed there and they started to live there, and Ismail grew up amongst them and married from them. Later on, Ibrahim comes back. Him and Ismail build the pillars of the Kaaba, and the story, you know it, that's not for this lecture. But this is where our story begins. Because tribes would come and try to live next to the spring. Everyone wanted to live next to the spring because there's water. Another tribe named Khuza'a, that tribe came and lived next to the spring. They dominated the tribe of Jurhum, the tribe that Ismail married into. These people from the tribe of Khuza'a, they brought forth idols. And they started to put idols around the Kaaba. And slowly they began to worship them. So they moved away from the monotheism of Ibrahim and they started to worship these idols. Eventually, the people of Khuza'a, they grew. The people of Jurhum, they were known as Bani Ismail. Why? Hundreds of years would pass. These people grew up in this land, generation after generation in this tribe, but the descendants of Ismail were always downtrodden. They were always known, you're from Bani Ismail. You're in this land, but you're known as Bani Ismail. The Khuza'a tribe are the ones who ruled the land, and they had the keys to the Kaaba. Until there was a coup and a battle that took place, the Khuza'a were kicked out and the Bani Ismail took over. When Bani Ismail took over, they took the keys of the Kaaba. A man by the name of Qusay, he was the one who took the key and he became the leader of the tribe in Mecca. And he began to apply new rules. The rules were to bring all the Bani Ismail together and live around the Kaaba. And they created a certain sanctity to the descendants of Ismail. This is over hundreds and then thousands of years this happened. Now, the descendants of Ismail all lived around the Kaaba. This is known in Arabic as taqrish. It means gathering. You know when you say to someone, arish lil fatura, arish li yaha, and break it down for me, or gather it for me. It comes from the word taqrish. And this is where they brought forth the name Quraysh. Quraysh were the descendants of Ismail that lived around the Kaaba. They were called Quraysh because they gathered and lived around it. Now, no one could come near Quraysh anymore. They became so dominant because they ran Mecca, they ran the water. When you run the water, you're king. They ran the water. They called people towards Hajj. They had the idols, they had the Kaaba. Mecca was a hotbed where all people would come. And because Quraysh was different to every other tribe, because every other tribe, they had to keep traveling to look for water, Quraysh was able to stay in the same place. So they did not have to split up. So it became the biggest tribe. So in Uhud, when Rasulullah was fighting Quraysh in Uhud, there were 3,000 warriors in Uhud. They were all cousins from Quraysh. 3,000 warriors, all cousins. So Quraysh were a massive tribe. They stayed together. Unlike the other tribes, they'd be in their hundreds. They'd move because there weren't too many of them. They had to keep splitting up and going to find water. Quraysh became very holy. If you're from Quraysh, you were the master of all the Arabs. The other Arabs, when they would come, they'd see you from Quraysh, they would wipe their hands on you, take barakah from you because you're from Quraysh. If you're walking with something, they say, no, I'll take it from you. You're from Quraysh, I'll hold it for you. Quraysh were the elites of the elite in Arabia. They were the highest tribe. Now, this tribe had several chiefs. Abdul Muttalib was a chief, a custodian of it. Qusay, that man that I mentioned, he had descendants. Of his descendants, there was a split in the line. It's all Quraysh. But one line went into one called Hashim. Another line went into one called Umayyah. When they say Banu Hashim, they mean they are descendants of Hashim up to Qusay. And when they say Bani Umayyah, they mean they are the sons and descendants of Umayyah. That goes back to Qusay. What that means is the Banu Hashim and the Banu Umayyah are what? They're cousins. And the chief of the Banu Hashim and the chief of the Banu Umayyah, here's the thing, Banu Umayyah were constantly jealous because the Quran descended on Rasulullah. Allah does not care about Hashim, Umayyah, Quraysh. It came on Rasulullah. It descended towards Rasulullah. But who cares about that? Bani Umayyah. How come the family of Hashim received the revelation and not us? It means Abu Sufyan and Rasulullah are cousins. And Muawiyah and Imam Ali are cousins. And Imam al-Hussain and Yazid are cousins. They're Walad Am. People don't know this. And that's why they were constantly after a political and family. They had a vendetta, a family vendetta and a political vendetta against the family of the Prophet. From the very beginning. They're all from the same tribe. They're all Qurayshis. Imam Hussain is a descendant of Ismail. And so is Yazid. They're all from Quraysh. The problem was, when Rasulullah came with Islam, he wanted to disregard this whole idea of tribes. That's why he was so successful. He brought everyone together, regardless of your tribe, high tribe, low tribe. The Qurayshis didn't like that though. How can you come and you're saying you're a prophet of God and you remove our idols and then you bring a lowly Arab from another tribe and you say he's my brother? I'm from Quraysh. He's not my brother. She's not my sister. I'm from Quraysh. They hated Rasulullah because they were so racist and prejudiced. They didn't allow anyone else to come into Quraysh. But when the Prophet became too strong, the Quraysh had no choice but to join him. But the Quraysh despised him. But who did they despise the most? Imam Ali alayhi salam. They hated Imam Ali. Why? Because he just kept killing them. In Badr, the Prophet is fighting against Abu Sufyan. He's fighting against the Quraysh. There are 1,000 warriors from Quraysh. Against how many in Badr? 313. 313 in Badr, 1,000 from Quraysh. When they go there, they call out the warriors of Islam. And who are the ones that step forward? The father of Hind, yani Yazid's grandfather. The father of Hind, Muawiyah's grandfather, Yazid's great-grandfather, and the brother of Hind. They go out to fight against Hamza and Imam Ali. And Imam Ali kills them both. So Imam Ali kills Hind's father. He kills Muawiyah's father-in-law. He kills Abu Sufyan's father-in-law. He kills Muawiyah's grandfather. He kills Yazid's grandfather. You think they forgot about that? They didn't forget about that. They wanted revenge for that. Hind said, I will go and I will gain the heart of Hamza and Ali for killing my father and my brother. She was constantly on a war cry. She kept telling Abu Sufyan, I want them dead. He organized his troops, 3,000 warriors in Uhud. They go to kill Imam Ali and Hamza. And they kill Hamza. They kill Hamza and she eats his liver. Just like they did in Syria a few years ago. These are respawns. These are all their grandchildren. And we're the grandchildren of the Imam. It's a respawn. If you understand Quraysh, you understand what's happening constantly. SubhanAllah, Quraysh constantly has powerful personalities. Right now, Sayyid Sistani is a Sayyid from Quraysh basically. And Sayyid al-Qa'id is from Quraysh. And our Sayyid in Lebanon is from Quraysh. Qurayshis have a special charisma that's there. In any case, in Uhud, they come, all these warriors, and she eats Hamza's liver, but she wants Ali. And that's when everyone ran, When it's easy, you're all Muslim. But when it's hard, everyone runs. There were men on the mountain, And Rasulullah said, don't leave the mountain. You stay guard on the mountain and we'll win this battle. But when they started to see that the Muslims were winning, they left the mountain to collect the treasures. They wanted money and treasure. When they left the mountain, they left Rasulullah unguarded. The Quraysh then circled around Khalid ibn Walid and all of his companions. They went around and they circled Rasulullah. He was alone by himself. Rasulullah was by himself fighting them. On the front, people started to scream, Qutila Rasulullah, Qutila Muhammad. People are screaming Qutila Muhammad, and there's people dying left, right and center, and blood everywhere, and dust is up and down. People began to run away, left and right. Everyone's scared. Hamza, they saw the lion of Allah, Hamza is on the ground and he's killed. And everyone's running and no one knows where Rasulullah is. And here it's so beautiful when you see the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam, what he does in Uhud. He says, I was fighting and I couldn't see Rasulullah. And everyone's screaming, Qutila Muhammad. And I was by myself. He said, I knew that Prophet Muhammad could not be dead because the mission was not accomplished. So, I said that, and this is his logical conclusion, he must have been raised into the heaven like Isa ibn Maryam. That was his logical conclusion. He's not dead, no way. If he's not around, then he's raised into the heavens, but he's not dead. So he fights by himself. He kept fighting by himself on that day until he reaches the place where he saw Rasulullah. And then he fought the people of Rasulullah. Who is fighting Rasulullah? Quraysh. And Rasulullah told him, where is everyone? Where'd they go? And the Imam says, قَدْ كَفَرُوا. They left us. They disbelieved. They left the mission. It's just you and I here. And the Prophet said, وَأَنْتَ يَا عَلِي? And you? He goes, I would never leave you. It was always them two. Always those two. And they fought off the army. And it's not this huge crazy miracle when we say that. It's not exaggeration. If there are a bunch of men around and you have the two fiercest warriors back to back and they come forward and no one come and pierce through their armor, they kept standing around them. Whenever someone comes forward, they defended each other until other Muslims came and started to hold their ground with them. Slowly. The Prophet would call out, Liman hadha safe, and then they would come and take the sword. Slowly. Rasulullah stand with Imam Ali alayhi salam, stood until they could push back the Quraysh into retreat. The Quraysh leaves. They could not get through because of Imam Ali. They bring in Ahzab, they bring all the different tribes and the Jews and Amr ibn Abdul Wid. And Amr comes, the greatest warrior, and he wants to fight. And he sees Imam Ali, he says, whose son are you? He says, Abu Talib. He says, I don't want to kill you. I know your father. Imam Ali says, but I want to kill you. You're coming to fight Rasulullah, I'm going to kill you. And he kills him. He was the thorn in their eye. They despised him. He had taken the life from each one of their families. So then, after the Fatah of Mecca, and they become Muslim, it was only 2 to 3 years before the death of the Prophet that had happened. When the Prophet dies, and Imam Ali comes, and he is going to continue this path of, it doesn't matter if you're Arab or if you're a foreigner. It doesn't matter if you're Quraysh or not. Imam Ali was not Qurayshi. Do you think Quraysh was going to accept that? Quraysh was waiting for the opportunity. And then the first Khalifa and second Khalifa do what they do to take the coup. Do you know who gets angry at them for doing what they did, by the way? Who gets angry at Abu Bakr and Umar? Abu Sufyan. Because he's like, why should they be the Khulafa? I'm from Bani Umayyah. So what does he do? Abu Sufyan goes to Imam Ali and says, cousin, this is for you and me. Look what they did. Say the word, I'll bring you 1,000 swords. Imam Ali said, who said it's for you and me? It's not for you and me. Imam Ali said, I need only 40 men, only 5 came. Because it was built on Iman. The problem was, Imam Ali's supporters were weak in terms of tribal alliance. Because they were all slaves. They were all former slaves or from foreign lands. Abu Dar, foreign land. Salman was a slave. Miqdad was a slave. They were all former slaves. So they have no one. If they die, no one cares. No one comes to seek revenge. But for the Quraysh, They're all sticking together. And they did not forget what Imam Ali did. And they were waiting for the opportunity. That's why he had no Ansar. That's why people were scared in their homes. That's why, because the Quraysh had waited for the opportunity. And the reason why they promoted the first three was because they loved Quraysh. And you can see it, and they're proud of it. It's in the hadith right now, they say that. Qurayshi is better than non-Qurayshi. An Arab is better than a foreigner. He says it in the hadith. And they gave away money according to that. From Baytul Muslimin. And they gave money to Abu Sufyan. So he can calm down. They gave him all the money in Baytul Muslimin. So when Abu Sufyan was angry, they said, calm down, here you go, here's all the money. He said, thank you very much. They went, they took Fadak. Because they had no money left. So do you see the zulm again and again and again on Ahlul Bayt? And there were no supporters. The third Khalifa from Bani Umayyah. The second Khalifa from Quraysh, the first from Quraysh, they loved Quraysh. How did Muawiyah become a king in Syria? Who loved Muawiyah so much? The second Khalifa loved Muawiyah so much. He put him in his position. And Uthman strengthened it until he became, they called him Qaysar al-Arab. He was the king and prince, the Caesar of the Arabs, Muawiyah. But why? Because this is a nice little reward because of the stand your father did on that day when we needed him. We're paying you back still. Karbala starts very, very early. So when we come to Karbala, and Imam al-Hussein stands there, and he says, don't you know who my mother is? We know who your mother is. Don't you know who my grandfather is? We know who your grandfather is. Don't you know who my father is? We know who your father is. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing this. So the Imam, he comes towards Kufa. He wants to go to Kufa. And they block him on the way. In the beginning, it isn't that large of an army. Hurr is the one that's with the army, leading that army. He blocks the Imam's path. And he says, you can't go forward. And then the Imam looks back and he asks his companions, what land is this? And one says, they call this land Nainawa. Then he asks someone else, is there something else they call it? What land is this? Another companion says, they call this land Al-Ghadiriyah. He says, is there another name for this land? What land is this? And the third companion says, they call this land Karbala. And then he stops. And he says, this is the land. I remember when my father told me about the land of Karbala. My brothers, set up your tents and prepare yourselves. This is the land where we will be killed, where our women will be taken captives, and our children will be marched with shackles around their arms and legs. They set up camp. Day by day, they see thousands of soldiers begin to join the enemy camp. They won't let the Imam go towards Kufa. He's not allowed. As their army grows, they guard the river and they cut the Imam off from water. This is in the first few days of Muharram. Around the 5th or the 6th of Muharram, they cut off the water from the Imam. And the children begin to scream because they have dry throats and they want to drink water. So Imam al-Hussein goes to his general, Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. He says, Ya Abbas, the children are thirsty. The children go to Sukaina because they know when Sukaina speaks to her uncle Abbas, she told him he doesn't refuse my request, so I'll go and speak to him. And she said, Uncle, we're thirsty. Can we please have water? Imam al-Hussein says, can you bring them water? Abu Fadl says, of course I'll bring them water. This happened on the 7th of Muharram. A lot of people don't know about this narration. But it was the first time they went to the river. It wasn't on the 10th, it was on the 7th of Muharram. Abu Fadl Abbas organizes the 70 to 100 men that remained with the Imam. And he takes Ali al-Akbar and he gives Ali al-Akbar the left flank and he takes the right flank. And they walk towards the river. 100 men walking towards the river, and they stop. And the men at the river are guarding it. And then Abu Fadl sends a man named Nafi'. Nafi', he says, go and bring water. Nafi' comes forward and he says to them, can I have some water to drink? And they say, yes, you can. And he says, can I take water back for my master Hussein? They said, no, he can't drink. He said, you can drink, but Hussein's not allowed to drink. The son of Ali is not allowed to drink water. The descendants of Ali are not allowed to drink water. So he said, Ya Mal'oon, you want me to drink, but you don't want my master to drink. He goes back to Abu Fadl al-Abbas, and then Abu Fadl al-Akbar, they organize it in a way in which they take the right and the left, and they have a group of men in the middle. They go and they fight off the army to open up the way to the riverbank. The 10 or so men that are in the middle behind them go forward, protected by the two flanks, and they fill up the water containers, and then they all go back to the tent, and not one of them dies. That's the first skirmish, the first battle that occurs in Karbala on the 7th day. They brought water back. That's why they call Abu Fadl Abbas al-Saqi. He brought the water back. That's why when Sukaina asked him on the 10th, she really had hope that he was going to bring the water back because he did it a few days earlier. So she really felt he was coming back. So when she asked him with full hope, and she knew he'll definitely bring the water back. On this night, put yourself in the positions of everyone there. Take yourself to that place and realize how hard it is. Everyone has their own perspective in Karbala. Abu Fadl Abbas, you must realize how hard it is for him. His whole life he was training for that day. He is the most fierce warrior, yet he has to stop and see each one of his best friends that he grew up with go and fight in front of him, before him, and get killed in front of him, and he can't go and defend them. Because every time he asks his Imam said no. So he keeps his sword sheathed. So that must have been so difficult when you know who you are, what warrior you are, yet you have to watch everyone else go before you, and even your nephews, even the sons of Zainab, small sons of Zainab, even dress the son of Imam al-Hassan in armor and let Qasim go out and watch him fight and die. He has to watch that. As a fierce soldier and general, that's so difficult. How difficult is it for Sayyidah Zainab to know that's it? After Imam al-Hussein, she lost all of the Ahlul Kisa. She's the last one. She left. She knows that that's it. Tomorrow I lose not only Hussein, I lose Hassan and Fatima and Ali and Rasulullah. I lose them all. How difficult is it for her in the middle of the night when she knows she can't go out and defend him? And she's stuck in the tents. How difficult is it to be Ali al-Akbar? Because there was a specific order that came from Sham. They said, kill Hussein and Ali ibn al-Hussein. Because they wanted to get rid of the line, the family line. Banu Hashim had to be killed now. Khalas, no more imams. Khalas. So when Imam Hussein at night time told all the companions, you can leave, they only want me. In truth, they want him and his son. So everyone could leave except me and Ali. They said, we want Hussein ibn Ali and Ali ibn al-Hussein. The problem, however, was they didn't know that Imam Hussein calls all of his son Ali. Because each one of Imam Hussein's sons was called Ali. They didn't know that. They didn't know that. Imam al-Hussein tricked the forces of Yazid. Because Imam Sajjad was already appointed. He was the next Imam. And by the grace of Allah, he was ill or wounded. And he could not go out into battle. Ali al-Akbar was his older brother. When Ali goes out into the battlefield and tells them, Ana Ali ibn al-Hussein, as far as they know, that's the one they have to kill. And they did. When they kill him, they say, mission accomplished. They killed Ali al-Akbar. How did Ali al-Akbar feel to do that? To represent his brother, who is the next Imam who they really wanted. He went and he didn't die only for his father, his Imam. He died for the future Imam. He pretended to be the future Imam. He pretended to be the Ali ibn al-Hussein that they wanted. And when they killed him, and afterwards when they come to the tents and they saw a man in the tents, Shimr asked, "Who is this man? There's another man here. Who are you?" He said, "Ana Ali ibn al-Hussein." He said, "We killed Ali ibn al-Hussein." He didn't know there was another one. And Sayyidah Zainab had protected him after the battle was over. So the same thing happened in Kufa, when they took him into the palace. And then Imam Sajjad stood up and said, "If you know me, you know me. And if you don't know me, let me tell you who I am. I am the son of Mecca and Mina and Isra' and Ma'raj. I'm the son of Rasulullah." What he's saying is, I am the son that carries on the line, I'm still here. This line that you wanted to kill, I'm still here. You know what Yazid recites in Sham when he sees Sayyidah Zainab in front of him and he gets his stick and he points it at the lips of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and he says, and this is where you understand why they did what they did, "I wish my grandfather from Badr was here to see this day. I finally got revenge for you." Yani, because of the victory in Badr for Rasulullah and Imam Ali alayhi salam, I killed and beheaded their grandson. I did it. I wish my father was here. I wish my grandfathers were here to see this. So Imam al-Hussein is the sacrifice for Rasulullah, for what happened in Badr. It's all connected. When you understand the history behind all of it, that's how it can happen. That's how it happens. This mass propaganda where for 80 years they do la'na on Ali ibn Abi Talib from the pulpits of Sham, and when the Imam is martyred in his prayer and they say that he died in his prayer, they say Ali prayed. That was the propaganda of the time. That's the majority. So my brothers and sisters, when right now you see that we are the minority, don't be saddened. We've always been the minority. There were only 70 to 100 men. The other side was 30,000. Who cares about the majority? The companions of Abu Abdullah didn't care about the majority. A night like tonight, Imam al-Hussein told them all, you can leave. He really meant that. He really meant you can leave and you're free and I won't hold it against you. But he was very lonely to have said that. Think of the loneliness in his heart for him to have said that. And he's looking at enemy camps. Imagine right now, I'm looking at all of you. You don't make a few hundred people. I'm by myself. It's scary to imagine you all want to kill me. It's scary to look at people and say they all want your blood. How lonely. Maybe someone like me can get scared, but someone like Imam Hussein doesn't get scared. But he feels lonely. He sees all of 30,000 in front of him. They're thirsty for his blood. He says, they want my blood. They don't want your blood. You can leave. Take your woman, your children, and you can leave. They say, we'd never leave you. Abu Fadl Abbas stands up when he says that, and he says, what is the point of life after you? Zuhair ibn Qayn stands up and says, Ya Abu Abdullah, if they were to kill me and then burn me and throw my ashes into the wind 1,000 times, Ma taraktuka ya Hussein, I will never leave you. I won't leave you. We will never leave you. They brought joy to his heart. That brought joy because he wasn't lonely anymore. So the Imam, he says, there's no companions like my companions. And we owe those companions because they represented us when we couldn't be there. We owe them so much for standing with the Imam on that day. The son of Rasulullah, the Prophet of God. That's why we're saying this. It's not just a sad story. This is the Prophet of Allah's son. And this is what happened to him. The worst tragedy. And Allah created a community to mourn for him and to cry for him. That's us. And Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, she walks around the tents. When Abu Abdullah comes back, she says, I'm worried that your friends might leave you. And one of the companions hears that and goes and tells Habib ibn Mudahir, who was Imam Hussein's closest companion. And Habib gathers his soldiers and they go and they stand outside the tents. 100 men stand outside the tents and they call out to Sayyidah Zainab, daughter of Ali, we're your soldiers. And we're standing here. And we won't leave you. And we won't leave our master Hussein. Instead, Zainab replies, Assalamu alayka ya Habib. And then Habib begins to cry and takes dirt and puts it on his head and says, the daughter of Ali sends salam to me. I'm a servant of the daughter of Ali ibn Abi Talib. On this night, this is a very difficult night. You have to open your heart and take yourself there. Because I look at all of you and I imagine, wallah, how it would have been if we were all there. All of us here prepared to give our lives and sacrifice our souls and our blood spill for our Imam. This is who we are. We have to prepare and believe this. And that's why we're built so different from every other nation. Because right now, I mentioned this a few times, when we begin to cry, someone walks in and sees us, they think, who just died? Their parents, who died? We tell them someone from 1,400 years ago. They can't understand that. Because we really mean it when we say, Bi abi anta wa ummi. For my father, my mother, yeah, I will sacrifice everything for you. That's deep love, deep, deep belief. Nothing can shake you when you have that sort of belief. I'm going to open up the floor. Maybe you have some questions for what we're speaking about right now. And after that, we'll go into our majlis. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. If you want to ask a question, just put your hand up. Yes, sir. He's going to give you the mic.
Testing.
I watched the Imam Hassan and Hussain series, and one of them you mentioned that Imam Hussain alayhi salam pointed to the sky and showed each companion that there's a place in heaven. Is that literal or is that metaphorically?
No, literally, according to the traditions, on the night when Imam Hussain alayhi salam told them to leave, like tonight, and they didn't leave, then he showed them their positions, their stations in heaven. And that's fine. Don't you always say that when Imam Mahdi comes back, he puts his hand on your head and then your potential is unlocked? There's no problem. You don't even have to be an imam for you to have a vision if Allah wants to give you a vision. But this is the imam that graced them with that vision on that night. The imam graced them with that vision. This is easy for Imam Hussain alayhi salam. It's no problem. It's easy. There was a sister that had her hand up? No? 1 second, just let me see if anyone else wants to ask anything first. There's a sister here. No? Oh, you don't want the mic? She doesn't want the mic. She doesn't want the mic. Okay, thank you. Imam Ali, sorry? He was. Imam Ali was part of Quraysh because it's a bloodline. There's no choice to be part of Quraysh or not. Imam Ali was from Quraysh. Imam Hussein's from Quraysh. Sayyid Hassan's from Quraysh. They're all from Quraysh. It's not your choice to be. Abu Sufyan's from Quraysh, Yazid's from Quraysh. This is the tribe. But when the Prophet came with Islam, he started to break down the idea of Quraysh. He didn't believe in that. He believed in Islam. Islam was what makes us equal. Akramakum andallahi atqakum. That we, the most noble of you, are the most God conscious of you. It's not about what family you're born into. It doesn't matter. That's what Islam believes. But the Quraysh don't like that. So Imam Ali is from Quraysh, but he wasn't Qurayshi minded. So the Quraysh hated him. They were Muslim, but they were still very Qurayshi. They still believed themselves to be the best, the elites. So what they did was, they remained Quraysh, but dressed it up in Islam. So Muawiyah became Amirul Mu'mineen of Quraysh, really. He has a palace in Syria, and he used Islam for his own gain. He continued the path of Quraysh, but looking like Islam. And the people bought it. Except our masters didn't. That's why Imam Hussain gave his blood for it. And that's why he was going to Kufa to give that blood. Because Kufa, even though they weren't ready, they had the love of Imam Ali. Medina didn't. And Mecca didn't. Kufa had love for Imam Ali, the people in Kufa. Imam Ali ruled there. But the problem they had was, they didn't have enough courage. There were many of them that did have courage. At the end of the day, Mukhtar and all these men, there were many in Kufa that had courage, but many didn't. Imam Hussain was going to Kufa to complete the Tashayyu'. They were not complete Shia yet. They were the closest thing to Shia. So he knew his blood must be spilt there. That's what would revive them. And then generations later, Kufa, it's said in narrations, in the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, you walk into Kufa, there'll be 900 narrators narrating from Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. It was the hotbed of Tashayyu'. Till now it is Najaf. Till now. Najaf, Kufa, that's where Masjid Sahla is and where Imam Mahdi will return. So, Imam Ali wasn't Qurayshi minded, but the bloodline is Qurayshi. Yes. Give it 1 second. If there's no one, you can ask it. Yes, sir. Oh, yes. The mic is coming. Oh. Tayyib. You know what? Ask until he gets it there. Is it haram to fast tomorrow? I don't want to iftim in ande, but don't fast tomorrow, obviously. Do imsak if you're going to do something until afternoon, just before the evening. Yani, keep away from the food and drink, but don't fast. No, we're not fasting tomorrow.
If Shi'ism was born in Qadir, when did the Sunni ideology fully form?
If Shi'ism was born when?
In Qadir.
In Qadir. Now look, the Tashayyu', Shi'ism wasn't born in Qadir, actually. The first time the word Shia was used, it was used by Rasulullah in Khandaq. When they were digging the grave, Imam Ali alayhi salam was with a group of people. Rasulullah had assigned different groups in Khandaq. And he said, this is this and so, these people's group, that's that person's group, that's that person's group, and this area is Ali was Shi'atuh. That's the first time he used it, and it was those around him, Ammar and the brothers. That's the first time they were known as Shi'at Ali. Yani they were his main companions. But the Shi'i identity was growing. And yes, in Ghadir, Islam was completed. But the real true Shi'i identity was finally completed in the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. That's why they call us Ja'faris. The main school, yani. Obviously, Tashayyu' was there. Imams were there, we followed them. But the identity was there. In the time of Ja'far al-Sadiq, it was there, completed. But the Shia were around from the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam. From the very beginning. Sorry, what? What was it? The Sunni school formed. So the Sunni school, as I'm saying, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq's school, I'm going to now contrast it to the Sunni school. The Sunni school, it formed mainly with the madhahib that they have now. So the scholars that they have, the main madhahib now is the Malikis, Hanbalis, Shafi'is. Those follow a certain scholar that they had. Those scholars were around maybe 100 years after the time of Rasulullah, which was in the time of Imam Sadiq as well. Malik ibn Anas is the author of one of the first books within the Sunni tradition, which was called Al-Muwatta. And in that he has the narrations that they had. But here's the interesting thing, here's the kicker. When the first and second Khalifa took over Islam, one of the first things that they did was they burned all the books. They burned all the hadiths. This is something that they all agree with, by the way. It's not a Shi'i thing. Okay? So they burned all the books. They said the Quran is enough. The Quran is enough for us. We don't need hadith. So 100 years later, or I don't know how many years, but let's say 100 give or take, Malik ibn Anas comes forward. It's maybe even more than 100 years in the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Malik ibn Anas, when he writes the Muwatta, and there's a few books before that, the question is, what are you basing the hadiths that you wrote in this book, what are you basing it on? Where'd you get those? Because the books were burned. So a lot of it was orally transmitted. Tabkhair, you're all orally transmitting the hadiths without being written down generation to generation because you weren't allowed to write it down. It was a crime. Imagine right now we're all memorizing something and then give it to our children to give to their children. All the different hadiths from the Prophet. How much of that is going to reach you as accurate? Nothing's written down. The difference is if someone says, what about you Shia? I did the same thing. No. No. Why? Because we believe that Imam's still alive. We still have a Ma'soom. So the door towards Allah is still open for us. We just ask the Ma'soom. He tells us. You don't have a Ma'soom. So what did you rely upon? Our hadith books, when did we rely upon them? We relied upon them much later than the Sunni school because we had an Imam the whole time. So when it comes to Shaykh al-Kulayni, who brought us our main hadith book, which is called what? Come on guys. Al-Kafi. We should all have that book. Okay? Al-Kafi is our book. You guys know Bukhari though, right? You know Bukhari and Muslim, you don't know Kafi. Come on. This is the thing. They keep wanting to make you go to their books. You have a book. Stay to your book. We're proud of our own identity. We don't need anyone else's book. We have our own book. We have a better book. Al-Kafi is the book of the Imams. I don't need a book just to debate. I have my own book. What the Imams say. Gathered, the companions of the Imams would stay with the Imams. They'd write down the teachers of the Imams. When Imam Mahdi went into Ghaibah, we gathered all of those different teachings into what we have now called Al-Kafi. That's where we get our fiqh from. That's where we get our wisdom from the Imams. So we didn't need there to be a hadith book when we have a Ma'soom present with us. But for the others, they did. So when you think about Bukhari, that book is authored and compiled 250 years after the Prophet, you know. Imagine, about 200 years later, they have the book Bukhari. It's not like it was an early book. So where'd you get all those hadiths from, man? How come Abu Hurairah can narrate 3,000 hadiths? He was there for a couple of years. How come? How come there are so many strange hadiths? Where'd they come from? There's a sister, you want a mic? Can we have a mic over there? We have a mic. I can't, we might have to pass that mic. I don't know. Try to speak. Okay, yes. Why didn't he change everything back? Okay. So the question was, when Imam Ali became the Khalifa, why didn't he change everything back? So Imam Ali was Khalifa for 4.5 years, and the first thing that happened was the first Muslim war. He tried to change everything back, and the people that fought against him were the wife of the Prophet, and Talha, and Zubair. So 20,000 Muslims died in the Battle of Jamal. Imam Ali was trying to bring it back. They didn't accept that. Even for small things, they wouldn't listen. For small things, think about this. Imam Ali was the general in the army of the Prophet. He was the flag bearer the whole time, right? Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, everything. After they go to the house of Sayyidah Zahra and they take over, what happens? Imam Ali alayhi salam disappears for 25 years. He's not in any of the armies. What else happens? Something called the futuhat, the conquests. You know about the conquests? So the conquests is what? When Umar took over, he sent the Arabs into all the lands. They took over the Byzantines, Persia. They moved into all the lands. The futuhat, the conquests that everyone is so very proud of. They moved into the lands. Imam Ali wasn't a part of that. He never sanctioned any of the wars. He was never in any battle or any war. Doesn't that make you think a little bit? The main warrior is in no war. They kept trying to bring him, he wouldn't go. They were in all the wars. Then what happened? Now you have Islam in Africa. You have Islam in Persia. 25 years, the first and second and third Khalifa become legends. A little kid born in Egypt or anywhere else, a kid born in Egypt, he thinks, wow, the second Khalifa, the legend. You tell him Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says, who's that? Who's that? Never heard of him. So when Ali ibn Abi Talib is given the Khilafah, because everyone wants him to have it in Medina, of the people that know, and he takes it, not everyone accepts that, because he is not Qurayshi. Because as soon as he tries to fix everything, as soon as he tries to make money equal, his friends turn on him. Zubair was one of the generals in the army in the Battle of Jamal against Imam Ali. Zubair, one of the main Shia he used to be. Zubair was in the house of Sayyidah Zahra defending her. Zuhair was with him when he buried Sayyidina Zahra alayhi salam. 25 years later, he's in the Battle of Jamal fighting against Imam Ali. Dunya can take anyone. It can take you from being someone who defended Sayyidina Zahra in the house and buried her to fighting against Imam Ali, and he dies in that battle. So Imam Ali tried to bring everything back. Even Taraweeh in Kufa, when Imam Ali first went to Kufa and saw them praying Taraweeh, he said, stop doing this. This is not from our path. We don't do this. They started to protest and they said, wa sunnata umara, wa sunnata umara. This is not what we were taught. The Imam Ali didn't want there to be a fitna and a problem, so he just said, fine, just leave it, just do it. Khalas. So he tried. The people don't listen. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This is a question that says, if you say power is not passed on by family, then how do we answer those who say the Imams were also from a bloodline? Yeah, they were from a bloodline. But it wasn't based on the elitism of being from the bloodline. Like Abu Fadl Abbas is from the bloodline. But he called Imam Hussain Mawlai, always. Imam al-Hussain followed Imam al-Hassan. Why? Not because he's my big brother. It's my Imam. Imam Sajjad was Imam Ali al-Akbar's little brother. But Ali al-Akbar will follow Imam Sajjad. It's not about the family, it's about being chosen by Allah. That's the difference. It's not that we are elite because we're born into it. No. Imam Mahdi's uncle, Ja'far, they call him Ja'far al-Kadhab, the brother of Imam Hassan al-Askari, the son of Imam Ali al-Hadi, he said he was Imam Mahdi. He claimed he was Imam Mahdi. When Imam al-Askari passed away, his brother Ja'far came and said, I'm the Mahdi, I'm the next Imam, I'm the 12th. He's from the bloodline, but he's Kharban. Imam Mahdi said, move. Told him to move from the side. I'm the new Imam. So it's not about being from a bloodline or being elitism, being from a tribe. It's about being appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the same way that Imam Ali was appointed. Here's the thing, you know when they say, why are you so fed up? Khalas, he should have been first, he ended up fourth. What's the big deal? The idea for us isn't, oh, he should have been first, he was fourth, you admit it. It's not political, it's part of religion. Because Allah said he's first. It's not that even he's first politically. He's supposed to be the first Imam, even if you don't recognize him, he's still the Imam. So even though they were khulafa politically, the Imam of Islam is still him. Because Allah said he's the Imam. So part of the deen is Imamah. So he's an Imam, part of religion. So for us, it's not the idea that we're hell-bent on revenge and we can't let it go. It's not about that we can't let it go. It's still till now, the fact that you don't recognize he's an Imam, it's Imamah. It's not Khilafah. He's the Imam. So for us, the idea is the deen is incomplete without Imam Ali alayhi salam's appointance as the one who succeeds Rasulullah. That is part of religion. So by going against that, you're against Allah. Okay. We'll do that one, and then the sister, and then that'll be the last one. So this one, and then this is the last one. Yes.
Thank you. So the question is around why do the Imams come from the descendants of Hussain and not Hassan? Can you just touch on that topic?
So that's actually a really good question. And I think that those kinds of questions can become other questions. And if I was to explain it, I'm going to explain it philosophically. And I know it's going to go over a lot of our heads, but I'll do something really quick, okay? Because these were appointed people from the very beginning. It wasn't an idea of it moved from one to the other. The fact is, Imam al-Hassan and Hussein, here's the difference between them and everyone else. Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein were both sons of Fatima. So, what I really want to ask is this. When Imam al-Hassan died, it's supposed to go to Qasim. If I want to go by the whole bloodline idea. Right? Because if it's like Lion King, if you're king, you give it to Simba. You give it to your son, not your brother. And that's why the whole myth of Macbeth is the uncle that wants to kill his brother and then kill his brother's son so he can become king. We don't have it like that because it's not about inheriting the kingdom for us. It was religion. So Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein were both chosen as Ahlul Kisa. One was supposed to die before the other. The one who remained is the one who continues the bloodline. You see? It wouldn't go to Qasim. How can Qasim be the Imam of Imam al-Hussein when Imam al-Hussein is the son of Fatima? And Qasim is the son of a woman, a great woman, but not the daughter of Rasulullah. Hasan and Hussein had a special station. One dies before the other, and the other continues the bloodline. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sister that had the question at the back, you still there? Is that you? That was you? Okay. So the question is, when Imam Ali alayhi salam tried to bring Islam back to its original form, and there was a war against him, and the war was headed by the wife of Rasulullah, the question is, why did he then bring her back honorably? And the answer to that is because the Quran says that the wives of the Prophet are the mothers of the believers. She's still al-Mu'mineen. She still is, according to the Quran. Because of the honor of the Prophet. Let me give you an example. When I went to Hawza, I remember the first day I walked in with my friend, and my teacher, he was a funny teacher. He comes in, he goes, Sayyid, Aud, Sayyid, Aud. And I'm all trying to be humble, like, no, he goes, like, Aud, mish mishanak, mishan Rasulullah, anta makhassak. You see? It's not for me. Like, he's, I was being like, honoring me, I'm about to show. He's like, it's not for you. It's for your grandfather. So I'm honoring you for him. Ana batata. So, it's the same thing. I'm honoring her just as the wife of the Prophet. Even though she does what she does and she made mistakes, she's the wife of the Prophet. I have to honor her. That's why. Even the way that he brought her back. Do you guys know how he brought her back? She was on the camel, right? That camel was what everyone was around and they were fighting. Imam Ali said, we have to take her off of the camel. So they went to destroy the camel so she can fall. But he sent in the son of Abu Bakr, was on the side of Imam Ali, by the way. Abu Bakr had a son named Muhammad. Muhammad, son of Abu Bakr. He was raised by Imam Ali. The story is very, when you get into it. He was a Shi'i. The son of Abu Bakr was one of the main Shia. And he died for Imam Ali. He was killed by the forces of Muawiyah. He even wrote a letter to Muawiyah, Muhammad ibn Abu Bakr. He said to Muawiyah in a letter, who are you and who is Ali? How can you compare yourself to him? And Muawiyah writes back, and this is one of the first sources, it's called Siffin, this book. Muawiyah writes back in his letter to Muhammad, he says, who are you to talk to me? He says, you're right. كان علي في زمن رسول الله كالنجوم في السماء لا يطال. He was like the stars in the sky, you can't reach him. Muawiyah admits this. But then he says, but it was your dad that did this. Your dad and the Faruq, they're the ones that did this. So why are you talking to me for? That was the way that he replied to him, to Muhammad ibn Abu Bakr. That he replied in a Jahiliyyah kind of way, your dad. So Muhammad was one of the main Shia. And Muhammad was with Imam Ali in Jamal. So Imam Ali told Muhammad, you go and you take your sister. So when he went, he had the cover on his face. He's the one who grabbed her. And she started to scream and say, how can Ali ibn Abi Talib send a strange man to the wife of Rasulullah? Then he showed her his face. Even then Imam Ali honored her. He wouldn't let a strange non-mahram go and take her. He sent her brother. The only one that could take her was her brother. So even there he honored her. Even in the way that he took her back. In everything Imam Ali knew, every detail. So no one can hold anything on him. So we'll end the Q&A there and begin our majlis. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا ابن رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا مظلوم يا غريب كربلاء يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. On the morning of Ashura, Imam al-Hussain saw his companions enter the battlefield one by one. He saw his best friends being slain in front of his eyes until there were no companions left. And there was only the Banu Hashim, the family of Rasulullah. Abu Fadl al-Abbas wanted to be the first to enter the battlefield. But Imam al-Hussein told him, no, Ya Abbas, you stay with me. The first will be my son. Abbas told him, Master, he has the blood of Fatima. Let my blood be shed before his blood. But Abu Abdullah knew it must be his son. He called forth Ali al-Akbar. Step forward, beloved. Ali al-Akbar steps forward. He says, my son, are you ready for your blood to be spilled? He says, Father, I'm ready to defend your honor and the honor of our family. He looks him in the eyes. He brings him towards his chest. And he embraces his son and tells him, go and say goodbye. Ali al-Akbar goes into the tent. Sukaina runs towards his legs and grabs him, not wanting her brother to leave. Zainab holds his head towards her neck. They don't want Ali to enter the battlefield after everyone who left never came back. Ali says his goodbyes and steps out of the tent, the one most representative of his grandfather, Rasulullah. Imam al-Hussain would always look at his face to remember Rasulullah. Now he looks at his face for the final time. Ali al-Akbar is about to mount his horse, but before he does, he says, Father, is there any water? My throat is killing me. He says, my son, I wish I had water. I would give it to you before myself. Ali al-Akbar mounts the horse with the blessing from his father. He sets out into the battlefield and he begins to fight like a ferocious lion, like his grandfather Ali ibn Abi Talib. As he fights one by one, he kills the enemies of Islam, but he circles back as his arms begin to tire, holding his sword. He says, "Father, my throat." Imam al-Hussein takes his ring. He says, "Ali, come to me." He puts the ring in his mouth to cool his tongue. The ring was so warm from the sun on the metal. Ali al-Akbar hugs his father one last time. He gets back onto the horse. He goes out once more. And Ali ibn al-Hussein ibn Ali, fighting the enemies one by one, they begin to overcrowd him. The sword becomes heavy as they begin to weigh down, striking him from all angles until an arrow pierces his chest and a spear pierces his stomach and comes out of his back, and the blood begins to spill all over his horse, and Ali feels the agony in his stomach. He tries to hold on to the horse, but the blood spills into its eyes, and the horse begins to panic and runs into the enemy camps. And now Ali is surrounded by hundreds of men, striking down on him from all angles with swords and spears, cutting his body, hundreds of wounds from head to toe. The horse runs forth and runs back out of the enemy camps, and Ali struggles to come up with the horse and drops onto the ground, barely breathing, covered in blood from head to toe. He calls out with his last breath, "Abata." Father, alayka minni salam. Imam al-Hussein runs towards the battlefield, and he approaches the body of Ali. He walks towards Ali and sits down next to his body. He takes his head into his lap. He begins to take the blood off of his face, wiping it from his eyes. And he opens his eyes and sees the face of Hussein. Waladi ya Ali, kallimni. Talk to me, my son. Ali looks at his father's face, and he begins to smile as tears stroll down his eyes. My son, am I looking at your smile for the final time? Ali Akbar says to him, "Father, I see Rasulullah, and he's giving me a cup of water. He says I will never go thirsty again, Father. I see my grandmother, Fatima. She keeps calling out your name, wa walada, wa Hussaina, wa Atshana. Ali breathes his last breath in the arms of Abu Abdullah. على الدنيا بعدك العفا يا علي. Imam al-Hussein carries the body of his eldest son back to the tent. He lays his body down, clearing the blood from his face. And Zainab comes forward and she sees the face of Imam al-Hussein as his eyes lock onto the eyes of Zainab. Ali Rah, Ya Zainab, Ali Rah. I've lost my beloved son. He loses his nephew Qasim. He loses all of his most beloveds. Even Abbas lay on the ground. Allah inkasara dhahri. There is no one left with Imam al-Hussein. He is in the middle of the desert alone. Mawla, I wish it was me alone instead of you, Mawla. He calls out, Hal min nasirin yansuruna. Is there anyone out there to heed the call of the son of Rasulullah? Are there any helpers? There is no reply except for a small cry, a tiny baby, an innocent child without any water. Imam al-Hussein takes the baby in his arms, standing before the army, calling for water, until Harmala points towards the baby's neck, the young baby Ali al-Asghar, with his innocent eyes, not knowing what's about to happen, feeling safe in the arms of his father. The arrow is shot towards its neck and pierces him from ear to ear. As the blood spills, the baby's thirst is quenched with blood. Ya Hussein, Ya Madloom, Ya Atshan. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wa lanatullahi ala al-zalimin ila yawm al-qiyamah.
rise, brothers and sisters, and let us journey once again to Karbala together. The night of Ashura, the quiet before the storm. Everyone is in their own separate camp, awaiting the day. And in the camp of Hussain, the men are sleepless, yet content, ready to farewell all they've ever known, busy in reciting the Holy Quran. And in the quiet of the night, a shadow leaves the camp of Hussain, walks atop a dune, and sits by a palm tree, eyes raised to the sky. And if you look closer, you'll see it's Zainab in her seclusion. No one beside her, not a friend in the world, no one to talk to but the night sky. She looks up and says,
Ya Layl Tawil Sa'at, Ya Layl Ahmil Ahatak, Ya Layl Tawil Sa'at, Ya Layl Ahmil Ahatak, Lo ودعت الوليان تتولى عن العدوان، لو ودعت الوليان تتولى عن العدوان.
treacherous night sky, unforgiving and cold, and my body is too weak for the problems I hold. Talk to me, hear my words and reply. Keep the red sun away from the sky. Night sky, I've nowhere to run. Night sky, please don't let your morning come.
يا ليل طول ساعتك، يا ليل أحمل أهاتك، يا ليل طول ساعتك، يا ليل أحمل أهاتك.
Certainty in me, my Imam can never be wrong. Please, night sky, I don't want to be strong. Treacherous sky, don't leave me alone. Tomorrow brings sorrow no one has known. Abbas will die by the river, and from thirst none will be saved. Please, night sky, I don't want to be brave. Night sky, I pray you add more hours to your stay. Don't die away.
بس هالليلة يمي
Leave Hussein with me for one more day.
ما تشوف عيوني باكر يا ليل طول ساعاتك يا ليل احمل
Keep the
آهاتك
moon high and lengthen your hours.
لو ودعتي الويل
For in the sun they'll remove the petals from these flowers.
تتولاني العدوان
Night sky, in the sun I farewell my protectors. Don't you care? Heads in one place, hands over there, and blood will be everywhere. Don't you care? The women and children paraded and placed in accursed lair. Night sky, reply to me. Don't just stare blindly. Speak to me through the air.
يا ليل ارحم دلالي يا ليل ضاعت آمالي يا ظهر الخوان تتولاني العدوان
Night sky, my treacherous friend, I know you'll betray me upon your end. You'll hand me over to a bloodied sky, under whom I'll lose the light of my eye. And though it's decreed that tomorrow Qasim will die, death may be sweeter to you than honey, but I don't want to say goodbye. You see, by the time Hussein opens Fatima al-Halila's letter, everyone she sends her salam to will be gone to a place that's better. And we will mourn, our necks will adorn the fetter. Among the bodies that are torn, the baby, newborn in the hands of my protector. Ya Qasim, your loved ones taste the same nectar.
أنا يا ليل العقيل زينب أنا يا ليل العقيل زينب المعروف خدري
Night sky, I know our fate. Rasulullah told us of all that unfolds this date. But protect me. Protect me, night sky. I don't want to hold this weight. I can't bear to stand by the body of Abbas and search for his hand. How can I? Sheikh Abbas and he doesn't reply. How can I? Abbas. Abbas. My brother. It's me. Zainab. Wake up. Wake up. promised to protect me. Abbas, wake up. You are my heart. How can I live with you torn apart? How can I, O night sky, dress Hussain, armored, and hand him his shield, knowing it won't help him on this perilous field? His procession to show oppression we never yield. This fate of separation has been sealed. O night sky, mooned and starred, what evils await me that I must be hard? Take me back into Haidar's arms, where I felt safe from all the world's tragedies and harms. To lean on my mother, where she'd teach me my pact. A time when her rib was still intact. To see Hussein holding Hassan's hand. Oh, the days when they'd walk in the room and the Prophet would stand. Kiss the lips of Hassan and the neck of Hussein to tell us how they both would be slain. I know what awaits and what is ordained, but Ya Layl, طول ساعاتك, I can't take this pain. Ya Layl, أحمل آهاتك.
يا ليل طول ساعاتك يا ليل احمل آهاتك لو ودعت الوليان تتولاني العدوان يا ليل ارحم دلاني يا ليل ضاعت اماني يا ظهر الخوان تتولاني العدوان.
To go through it with Abbas and then go through it again. How can I watch Harmalat the cursed kill Abdullah while he's dying of thirst? O night sky, the most treacherous of skies, how can I sit by Hussein as he dies and beg him, Mawlai, Mawlai, Hussein, please open your eyes. Please open your eyes. By the right of our mother, Fatima Zahra, open your eyes. Open your eyes. How can I stand there and watch in his torture? How can I who watched my grandfather, my father, my brother and my mother die, how can I, O night sky, not cry when he whispers, Rasulullah brings me the water? How can I, O treacherous sky, be forced in this way to say my goodbye? Why? O sky, on this night, lengthen each hour, Our enemies are blinded by vengeance and power. Lengthen each hour, night sky be a friend. Delay this day so your night won't end. Delay this day to delay my pain. Delay my final farewell to Hussain.
يا ليل كافي ترعوني يا ليل صبحك افجعني لو ودعتي الوليان تتولى عن العدوان دنيانا ظلام والخدمة ضويل دنيانا ظلام والخدمة ضويل الما يبكي حرام طبرته هويل الكل الما عنده حسين آخر تلوين الما عنده حسين آخر تلوين تاليها يصير والماكو سوى من حقي أهيم محبوبي رحيم الما يرضى يجي يشمي لهوى يشمي لهوى ما حد مثل قلب متى ذابحني هم خنصر يمينه والسهام ذابحني هم خنصر يمينه والسهام بعيوني ألم ما وذرتها على الخيام حسين 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 دنيانا ظلام والخدمة ضويل ما يبكي حرام طبريته وين دنيانا ظلام والخدمة ضويل ما يبكي حرام طبريته وين كل ما عنده حسين آخر تلوين جاوب ما عنده حسين آخر تلوين تاليها يصير والماكو سوى من حقي أهيم محبوبي رحيم ما يرضى يجي يمشي لهوى ما حد مثل قلبه الحنين ورحمته على السلم خيام اختها تنزل دماء، وانطانا خيمه وطاحت خيمته، ذابح نهام خنصر يمينه والسهام، ذابح نهام خنصر يمينه والسهام، بعيوني ألم ما وذرته على الخيام. حسين 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 جاوب حسين 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 يا خيمة باكر ليش تحترقن يا خيمة، أنا الوحد وعندي يتيمان، عوفا نجدم زينب يا جمرات، عوفا نجدم زينب يا جمرة. على كيفك حبيبي يا خيمات، باكر ليش تحترقن يا خيمات، أنا الوحد وعندي يتيمات، عوفا نجدم زينب يا جمرات، عوفا نجدم زينب يا جمرات. اسمع بدون لطم رحم الله والديك، بدون لطم مقطع اللطم رحم الله والديك. باكر ولا اقعد على راحتك حبيبي، علقة رحم الله والديك استريح. باكر ولا يبقى الخو بين الغروب وحيدة. أريدك تنزل إيدك وتاخذ بالك إلى سيدة مملاتك سيدة فاطمة الزهراء وسيدة زينب عليها السلام وسيدة رقية، وتنادي سيدة زينب باكر ولا يبقى الخو بين الغروب وحيدة، باكر وراي اشكد ركوب للمشرعة البعيدة، ألزم طفيل يعثر طفيل صوت التوى على ايده، احمي برقايا من الجمور خالي يطيق حميده. اسمع يا العيون جف جناب تنسطرن، يا العيون باكر وانت انضمن يا المتون، عقب القمر حدايا اليكرهون. ويلي باكر اشوف الما شفيت كل عمري وحياتي، باكر ترى رماد الخيام سجادتي صلاتي، باكر يضال صوت الشمير يندى المتين بناتي، معناها لو جابوا حبيل ما ظل ولي الخواتي، يموتون باكر كل هليج زينب يموتون يموتون باكر كل حليج زينب يموتون، ناس بهلة دموعك يشمتون، زينب والينوليها يصيحون يا خيمة باكر ليش تحترقن يا خيمة، أنا الوحد وعندي يتيمات، عوفا نجدم زينب يا جمرات. وإلى شرف النبي والأئمة الأطهار ولمن مات على الإيمان نهدي ثواب صورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.